Apple just refused to help Uncle Sam to hack the phone of one of the San Bernardino shooters. Is this good news? Let's explore. Hello everyone and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Okay, so the news is fairly simple. The Federal Bureau of Investigation wants to know what's on the phone of one of the San Bernardino shooters. The trouble is that they don't know the password, and if they try 10 times and fail, all the data is destroyed. So they went to court to ask for a search warrant, which the magistrates provided. Now the trouble is that in order to apply the search warrant, it's not enough for Open to just open its gates for an FBI investigation, but in order to apply the warrant, Apple would have to intentionally create a backdoor into its security system in order to allow the FBI to use brute force until it figures out the password and gains access to the phone. Now, a technical point, a brute force attack is essentially trying literally all the combinations possible for a password. But with a 10 attempts limit, the FBI cannot do that now. Well, Tim Cook, the chief executive officer of Apple, refused even this and said that while he is convinced that the FBI's intentions are good, he contends that what Uncle Sam is demanding is too dangerous to even think about creating. Specifically, this would entail the creation of a special version of their operating system that bypasses all or most of the security features, then install that on the FBI's phone. All fine and dandy, but the creation of such software, which Tim Cook insists that it doesn't exist yet, would open the floodgates to unlock any iPhone of any person anywhere on Earth. The current management at Apple thinks that's too dangerous and that, quote, while the government may argue that its use would be limited to this case, there is no way to guarantee such control, end of quote. Well, for starters, I don't trust Tim Cook or Apple in general. Despite claims to the contrary, there have been numerous cases of users seeing random slideshows of pictures on their Apple TVs with pictures that the users had deleted months prior to that, and pictures that have never been loaded into the clouds. So, the privacy of users at Apple is not exactly airtight as Tim Cook would suggest. With that being said, there is a fundamental difference between putting your data out there voluntarily and having the government coming in and taking it by force, or the government compelling the provider to create a leak where none existed before. This issue created quite a division within the public opinion, and make no mistake, it is an issue of concern for anyone on the planet, including those who don't have iPhones. And I'll explain in a minute why. On one hand, there is the group that contends that the San Bernardino shooters don't have a right to privacy, having committed abominable crimes against humanity already. Even from a libertarian/minarchist position, one can safely argue that this is a matter of national security and within the legitimate boundaries of the government to try its best to investigate and learn as much as possible so as future attacks be prevented by apprehending the San Bernardino shooters network. On moral grounds, it is also very hard to argue for the right of privacy of a bloodthirsty dead jihadi. On the other hand, however, there are the arguments about consequences. Sure, we can agree morally, ethically, and even judicially that this phone should indeed be hacked by the government. But can we have any, and I mean any, guarantee whatsoever that this power, once in the hands of the government, will not be extended to everyone else? And even if we were to trust the US government not to do that, a trust which I would never extend to any government, is there any guarantee that the government won't lose this power into the wrong hands, thus enabling more cyber terrorism? And the answer to that question is a resounding no. Government is inherently bureaucratic, as we all know, and thus inherently corrupt and inefficient. It happened quite recently when the Internal Revenue Service was leaked with around 30 million tax forms with all the data of 30 million American citizens and residents. It seems that there was no encryption and all the data was stored on-site in plain text format. As such, I'm surprised it took so long for this to happen, really. So, under these circumstances, it's not even a statist versus anti-statist argument, but rather a practical and pragmatic argument. What track record does the US government have in protecting people's privacy? Well, compared to Apple's, that track record is abysmal, to say the least. And that's coming from me, and I absolutely despise Apple. But, as in many other dilemmas, one should look for wisdom in the Constitution, especially the Fourth Amendment, which states that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, the question is whether this is unreasonable search or not, because otherwise the probable cause is clear to everyone, and the warrant does describe the place to be searched and the things to be seized. And this is what technology tends to do. It renders some aspects of the law obsolete and makes others quite murky. But I contend that in this case it doesn't. Think about it this way. Your neighbor is suspected to have had a secret warehouse somewhere in or around his property where he held, let's say, weapons. The government comes in and searches his house and finds nothing. But then further investigation finds a secret door that the government can't break, and because the door is oriented towards your property but not on your property, it appears that wherever the door takes, it's likely that the room extends somewhere beneath your property as well. And since the government cannot break the door, they get a warrant to start digging around the door and extend all the way beneath your house to try to find the secret room to where that door is taking. Such digging would endanger the very existence of your house and make it very likely that within days your house may collapse entirely if the digging is allowed. Now, what would you do? Would you be okay to have your house collapsed in the name of the probable cause that your neighbor might have had an arms deposit? Serious question. And my analogy is imperfect because one could argue that the government could offer due compensation in such cases, whereas in the Apple case, the externalities are unknown. Who will compensate the millions of users affected by the creation of such software? How much is that even worth? As such, the only compromise that I can really see is to allow the FBI to try things on Apple's property and then allow the FBI to leave the premises only after Apple reinstated the original operating system on the phone, thus not allowing a government agency to leave with such a tool. But even this compromise is debatable, to say the least. Who is to say that an Apple employee won't take that secret and then give it to the government? Or sell it to the highest bidder? It's not like this hasn't happened before or something, and in spite of the public denial of such practices, it is not uncommon at all for governments, including the US government, to keep one or two spies in certain companies. And this is a problem only if you get caught. And even then, there's always plausible deniability. Now, ultimately, this could be just a marketing trick by Tim Cook. Surely Apple's image will be improved if he can give the impression that Apple cares about their customers' privacy. Heck, it even made me, an Apple hater, to speak semi-nice about them. But whether this is a PR move or not, the principle still stands. Is the privacy of tens of millions of law-abiding Americans and the privacy of over 100 million non-Americans who are under no obligation whatsoever to give two shits about the American law worth the trade-off in exchange to possibly make a breakthrough in this case? Because remember, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. And whatever trade-off will be chosen in this case, it will impact large swaths of people, most of them under no legal or moral obligation to give a flying toss about the United States courts or legal system. And for this reason, the discussion should be more in terms of principles than in terms of this particular case. Yeah, sure, we all want protection from murderous jihadis, but how much more liberty should be sacrificed to achieve that? Because remember, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And with that being said, thank you all for watching and supporting this channel. See you soon on Freedom Alternative.